Can $1.20 buy warm socks? The black girl asked softly. No, the cashier said, blurting it out before she could stop herself. Her voice was much softer than the word itself. These socks are $5.99. The small girl standing at the counter looked up at the woman, then lowered her eyes to the gray winter socks lying between them. They were thick, folded neatly inside a thin plastic band, the kind Whitmore convenience store always placed near the register whenever December came around. The girl was silent for a moment. Then she lifted both hands and carefully placed a small glass jar on the counter. The jar made a dull clinking sound as it touched the scratched wooden surface. It had once held grape jam. Now it held only a few coins, mostly pennies, with 2 nickels stuck near the bottom and a dime pressed against the glass. But this is all I have, the girl said. Megan Ellis, the cashier, looked down at the jar. She was only 24 years old and had been working the register for 3 hours. Behind the girl, the line was starting to grow, and the manager always seemed to notice everything except the things that truly mattered. Megan gently picked up the jar and gave it a small shake. The coins inside knocked against one another, making a thin, lonely sound. How much is in here, sweetheart? The girl pressed her lips together, trying hard to remember. 20 cents. Then her eyes widened as if she had suddenly remembered something very important. Oh, I have more. Some in my mama's coat pocket. She shoved both hands into the pockets of her old purple coat. The sleeves were so short they exposed her thin wrists. First, she pulled out a folded store receipt. Then, a loose button. Finally, she took out a crumpled $1 bill, soft from being carried around for too long. She carefully placed the bill beside the jar. That makes $1.20, she said. I counted it twice. Megan looked at the money on the counter. $1.20. It was still far from enough. The girl's knit hat sat crooked on her head. One braid near her cheek had slipped loose from its tie. The toes of her shoes were soaked from the snow. And every time she shifted her weight, Megan could see that the girl was trying her best not to shiver. Are these socks for you? Megan asked. The girl shook her head. For my grandma. Megan's hand rested on the barcode scanner, but she did not scan the socks. I'm sorry, Megan said, lowering her voice. But this isn't enough money. You'll have to go home, bring back the rest, and then I can sell them to you. Megan pushed the jar back toward the girl. The girl took it, then stood there staring at the socks for a long time. Do you have any thinner ones? She asked. Just a little thinner, or maybe some that aren't as good. Megan blinked. What do you mean not as good? The girl nodded, embarrassed by her own words, but too worried to stop. I mean, they don't have to be the good kind. They don't have to be soft. They don't have to be pretty. A cheaper kind is fine. They just need to not have holes in them. Something flickered across Megan's face. We don't sell bad socks here, sweetheart, Megan said gently. Only regular socks. Good socks. The girl nodded as if she understood, even though the answer clearly did nothing to help her. Okay, she whispered. Yes, ma'am. Then she looked back at the gray socks. The worry on her young face suddenly seemed heavier. Far too heavy for a child. There really aren't any thinner ones, she asked again. Maybe in the back. Megan glanced toward the stockroom door. No, sweetheart. These are the cheapest winter socks we have. What about a sale? The girl asked. My mama says stores have sales sometimes. Maybe these are on sale today. Megan wished that were true. She wished she could simply press a button and make the register ignore the missing amount. She wished the child in front of her had asked for something easier to refuse. They're not on sale today, honey. The girl pushed the glass jar a little farther forward, as if placing it in the middle of the counter might give the coins inside a louder voice. I'll bring more money later, she said. My mama is looking for work. She's been out since this morning. When she gets a job, I'll bring the rest. I promise. Megan rubbed her thumb along the edge of the scanner. I believe you, she said softly. But I can't sell them for less than the listed price. Why? The question was not rude. It was quiet, sincere, and so innocent it hurt. Because I work here, Megan said. I don't own the store. If I change the price, I'm breaking the rules. The girl stared at her. Megan went on, her voice even lower. And if I break the rules, I could lose my job. I know that sounds terrible, but even over one pair of socks, I could lose my job. The child took that in slowly. You could lose your job because of socks. Megan gave a tired little nod. Because of the price, because of the rules. The girl looked down at the $1 bill in the glass jar. Rules don't ever get cold. Megan did not know what to say to that. A man standing near the coffee counter suddenly stopped stirring his cup. A woman holding a grocery basket looked down at the child's wet shoes, then at the jar, and quickly looked away. The girl tried one more time. Could you hold these socks for me until my mama has the money? I can hold them until the end of the day, Megan said. But after that, I have to put them back on the shelf. The girl pressed her lips together. My grandma needs them today, she whispered. The heat in our house is broken. She has asthma. The cold makes her cough real bad. Before Megan could answer, another employee stepped out from the aisle. In one hand, he held a box cutter. Under his other arm, he carried a half-open case of canned soup. His name tag read, Kyle. Hey, is she still asking for stuff? Kyle said under his breath. First she's bargaining, now she's begging. Megan turned sharply toward him. Kyle, what? He shrugged, looking at the girl as if she were a problem someone had left near the cash register. People have been doing this all week. They walk in with some sad story, ask for free stuff, and next thing you know, it's being sold 2 blocks away. Socks, baby formula, cold medicine. It's all the same. The girl's eyes moved from Megan to Kyle. She held the jar with both hands. I'm not begging, she said. Kyle let out a small laugh, but there was no humor in it. Sure sounds like it. She's just a child, Megan said, her voice sharper than she intended. And I'm an employee, Kyle replied. So are you. If we start handing out merchandise just because somebody says their grandma is cold, Dale will take it out of both our paychecks. You know that Megan hated it because it was just true enough to trap her. The girl looked back at the socks. My grandma's name is Rose, she said, as if saying the name might help the adults understand that her grandmother was a real person, not a made-up story. She coughs a lot when the house gets cold. I just want to keep her feet warm. Kyle tightened his arm around the carton. Then your mama needs to come by them. My mama is trying to find work. Then she can come back when she has money. The girl's face changed. Megan looked at the $1 bill on the counter. Then at the jar, then at the socks. She thought about the money in her own coat pocket. $4 and a few coins. Not enough for rent, not enough for gas, but enough to buy 1 pair of socks. Except Kyle was standing there. The camera hung right above the register. And Dale Harkins, the manager, always checked every canceled transaction and every discount as if he were hunting for weakness to punish. I'm sorry, Megan said, and the words caught in her throat. I'm truly sorry. The girl slowly picked up the $1 bill and tucked it back into her coat pocket. Then she hugged the glass jar to her chest. The coins inside clinked again, this time because her hands were shaking. I didn't make it up, she said. Megan's throat tightened. I know, but she did not look like she really knew, Kyle muttered. Yeah, that's what they all say, then turned and walked back into the aisle. The girl lifted the socks with both hands. Not to steal them, she only held them for 1 more second, pressing her small fingers into the soft gray fabric. Then she carefully set them down on the edge of the counter, as if leaving them there would hurt less than carrying them back to the shelf herself. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to bother anybody. At the far end of the store, near a stack of winter blankets that had just been delivered from the warehouse, a man in a dark coat slowly lowered the inventory list in his hand. That afternoon, Ethan Whitmore had quietly stopped by to inspect the new winter shipment. He had always liked seeing his store the way customers saw it. At times when no one knew an important man was present, and he had heard every word. He looked at the child holding the glass jar. He looked at the gray socks lying silently on the counter. Then he looked toward the aisle where Kyle had disappeared before turning his eyes to Megan, who stood behind the register with shame and helplessness written all over her face. Ethan folded the inventory list. Then he walked toward the checkout counter. Megan saw him before Annie did. Her face changed so quickly that Annie turned around to see what had frightened her. At first glance, the man walking down the aisle looked like any other customer. But the way Megan immediately straightened told Annie that he was not just an ordinary customer. Kyle saw him, too. He had only made it halfway back toward the canned soup display. The box cutter in his hand froze. Mr. Whitmore, Megan said. Ethan stopped beside the checkout counter. He looked at the gray socks, then at the jar in Annie's hands. Are these the socks you wanted to buy? He asked. Annie hesitated. Yes, sir. For your grandmother. The little girl nodded. Her feet get very cold. Ethan glanced at Megan, his voice showing no sign of irritation. How much are these socks? $5.99, Megan replied. And how much does she have? Megan swallowed. $1.20. Ethan turned back to Annie. Did you count it yourself? I counted it twice. I believe you. That simple sentence seemed to confuse Annie. She studied his face as if she were waiting to see whether there was something hidden behind his kindness. From the aisle, Kyle cleared his throat. Sir, I was just telling her that we can't randomly discount merchandise like this. Lately, a lot of people have been coming in with all kinds of stories. And Ethan raised one hand. Not very high, just enough to stop him. Kyle fell silent. Ethan still did not take his eyes off Annie. Did you ask anyone to give you the socks for free? No, sir. Did you say you were going to sell them? The girl's eyes widened. No, sir. Did you come in here to bother anyone? Annie shook her head. I didn't mean to. That is not what I asked. Ethan's voice remained calm. I asked whether you came here to bother anyone. No, sir. I came to buy socks for your grandmother. Yes, sir. Ethan gave one nod as if that settled the matter. Megan stood frozen behind the register. She wanted to apologize, but the apology now seemed too late to soothe anything. She had watched the child shrink in front of her. She had known the girl was telling the truth, yet she had still allowed cold rules to stand between a sick grandmother and a pair of winter socks. Ethan picked up the socks and placed them closer to the scanner. Ring them up. Megan looked at him. Yes, sir. Annie quickly stepped forward. Wait. Ethan turned to the girl. I don't have enough money. I know. I can't buy them if I don't have enough money. You brought everything you had, but that isn't the same thing. No, Ethan said. It isn't. Annie looked down at the glass jar. My mama says we're not supposed to take things without paying for them. That is a good thing for a mother to teach her child. Then I can't take them. If this moment touched your heart, please like this video and leave a comment telling us where you are watching from. Your voice matters here, and if you believe in kindness, dignity, and stories that remind us what it means to be human, please subscribe to the channel. Ethan quietly watched the girl for a moment. She was refusing, not because she did not need the socks, but because the small dignity her mother had built around her mattered more than her freezing hands, her soaked shoes, and all the adult eyes watching her. He bent down slightly, not quite kneeling, just enough so she would not have to tilt her head back too far. What if I buy them then? Annie looked at him closely. For me, for your grandmother. Why? At first, the question held only surprise. Then suspicion slipped into it. Ethan took a deep breath. Because a long time ago, someone bought me something warm when I couldn't afford it, he said. And I have carried that debt of kindness in my heart for a very long time. Annie did not understand all of it, but she heard enough truth in his voice to stop looking toward the door. Megan scanned the barcode on the socks. The register gave a steady familiar beep. Ethan reached into his coat and took out his wallet. Kyle shifted slightly. Mr. Whitmore, if word gets out that we're giving things away for free. Only then did Ethan look directly at him. Did I ask for your opinion, Kyle? Kyle's mouth immediately closed. Ethan handed Megan a bill. Get 2 more pairs. Annie's head shot up. No, sir. Just 1 pair. 1 pair for your grandmother to wear tonight. Ethan said. 1 pair for tomorrow and 1 pair to change into when the other 2 are being washed. Annie frowned a little. We don't do laundry every day. Then the extra pair is for whenever you need it. Megan took 2 more pairs of socks from the display. Her hands moved faster now. Perhaps because she was relieved to finally have clear instructions. Or perhaps because kindness became easier when someone with authority allowed it to happen. Ethan looked toward the winter goods section. Add a pair of gloves. Annie immediately shook her head. My grandma didn't ask for gloves. Does your grandmother have gloves? Annie stopped. She has 1. 1 pair. 1 glove. Ethan's jaw moved once. Add the gloves. Megan did. And a blanket, Ethan said. Annie's voice rose with worry. Sir, that's expensive. Yes, it is. I can't pay you back. I am not asking you to. But my mama, your mama sounds like a woman who has taught her child properly. I have no intention of ruining that. He closed his wallet. This is a gift. Annie hugged the jar tightly to her chest. People don't give gifts to people they don't know. Ethan almost smiled, but not quite. At Christmas, sometimes they do, but it isn't Christmas yet. Then I came early. That made Megan breathe out through her nose. A sound caught somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Ethan paid. The receipt slid out of the machine. Megan placed the socks, the gloves, and the blanket into a large paper bag with handles. Annie looked at the bag as if it were too heavy for her, or perhaps as if she was not sure she was allowed to carry it. Ethan picked up the jar from the counter where Annie had set it down and handed it back to her with both hands. Keep your money. Annie did not reach for it, but then I didn't pay. You cared, he said. Today. That is more than most people did. The girl stared at him, unsure whether that was something adults usually said when they were sad. Megan lowered her eyes. Kyle made a small sound in his throat, but said nothing. Ethan turned to Megan. Where is Dale? I think he's in the office. Tell him I'll speak with him later and tell him not to leave. Yes, sir. Then Ethan turned back to Annie. How far away do you live? 4 blocks. You walked here alone. Annie's shoulders lifted slightly as if she had already prepared herself to be scolded. My grandma was sleeping. My mama is looking for work. Ethan looked at Megan. Can you leave the register for a moment? Megan glanced at the line of customers, then at Kyle, and then back at Ethan. Yes, sir. I want you to call the phone number Annie has for her mother. If she has one, if her mother does not answer, you will come with us to walk this child home. She should not have to walk alone in this weather. Annie tightened her grip on the jar. I can walk by myself. I believe you can, Ethan said. But you shouldn't have to. For the first time, Annie looked more tired than afraid. Megan walked around from behind the counter. Do you have your mother's phone number, sweetheart? Annie nodded and pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat pocket. The paper was soft along the creases with numbers written carefully in blue ink. Megan dialed the number. The phone rang until it went to voicemail. Maybe Mama's at an interview, Annie said quickly, defending her mother before anyone had a chance to accuse her. She's been trying all morning. I believe you, Ethan said again. The second time, the words reached a little deeper into the girl's heart. Megan left a message. Ethan told her to try again. Still, no one answered. Outside, the afternoon had begun to darken. Light snow tapped against the front windows in small dry specks. Ethan lifted the paper bag. Then we'll bring these socks to your grandmother and we'll leave a note for your mother telling her exactly where you are. Annie looked at the bag, then at Megan, then at Ethan. The girl thought for a moment. Then she held out the glass jar. Can I bring my $120 with me? Of course, because I brought something, too. Ethan nodded. Yes, you did. Megan locked the register and put on her coat. Kyle stood beside the canned soup display, far quieter than he had been all afternoon. As they walked toward the automatic doors, the security guard quietly stepped aside. The woman holding the grocery basket watched them go. The doors opened. Cold air rushed into the store. Annie stepped out first, holding the jar with both hands. Ethan followed with the bag of socks, gloves, and a blanket. Megan walked beside them, still holding the phone, ready to call Lisa Carter again. Behind them, the gray socks were no longer lying on the counter. The cold outside Whitmore Market was the kind that made people pull their shoulders up before they realized they were doing it. Annie stepped onto the sidewalk with the glass jar held against her coat. And for a moment, she looked at the snow drifting under the street lights as if she were measuring the distance home. Ethan carried the paper bag in one hand. It held 3 pairs of socks, a pair of gloves, and a folded blanket thick enough to change the shape of the bag. Megan walked beside Annie with her phone in her hand, glancing down every few seconds in case Lisa Carter called back. Which way? Ethan asked. Annie pointed left past the bus stop, then the brick church. Then our house is after the little store with the blue door. You know the neighborhood well. She nodded. Grandma says knowing your way home is important. She's right, Ethan said. They walked slowly because the sidewalk was uneven under a crust of old snow. Ethan adjusted his pace to Annie's without making a show of it. Megan noticed. So did Annie, though she said nothing. A city bus groaned past them and stopped at the corner. Its doors opening with a sigh. 2 older women climbed aboard carrying grocery bags, and one of them looked at Annie's jar and gave her a small smile. Annie smiled back, polite and quick. Megan tried Lisa's number again. It rang, then went to voicemail. Still no answer, Megan said. She's probably still asking for a job. Annie said her voice was matter of fact, not worried. Mama says when grown-ups say they'll call back, sometimes they don't, so you have to keep asking different places. Ethan looked ahead at the gray street. Your mother sounds persistent. What does that mean? It means she doesn't give up easy. Oh, Annie considered that. Then, yes. They passed the bus stop. A man in a brown work jacket stood under the shelter with a lunch pail in one hand. He gave Ethan a brief nod. The kind working men give when the weather is doing more talking than anyone else needs to. Ethan returned it. You own that store? Annie asked after half a block. I do. All of it? That one? Yes. And others? How many? A lot. Annie looked up at him with open curiosity. Do you know where all the socks are? Megan pressed her lips together, trying not to smile. Ethan glanced down. Not usually, but you knew today. Today I was checking the winter shipment. What's a shipment? Boxes of things the store sells. Socks, blankets, gloves, canned soup, batteries. Annie nodded as if that made sense. Grandma says batteries disappear when you need them. She's right about that, too. The brick church came into view, its sign half covered in snow. New Hope Baptist Church had a wreath on the door and a banner announcing a Christmas dinner the following Friday. Ethan noticed the wheelchair ramp had been shoveled clean while the sidewalk across the street had not. Somebody cared for that church. Somebody had come out with a shovel before breakfast and made sure people could get inside. Annie pointed again. That's where Grandma goes when her breathing is good. Does she sing? Megan asked. Only quiet, she says. Her singing voice retired before she did. This time, Megan did laugh softly. Annie seemed pleased by that. For a few steps, she walked with a little more ease. The jar no longer pressed so tightly to her chest. Ethan's phone buzzed. He shifted the bag to his other hand and looked at the screen. A message from his assistant asked whether he still wanted the 5 o'clock call with the regional directors. He typed back, "Cancel. Emergency review tomorrow morning." Then he slid the phone away. Megan saw the message but pretended not to. "You can go back if you have work," Annie said. Ethan looked at her. "This is work. Walking sometimes." She thought about that. Mama walks all morning when she's looking for work. That kind counts, too. They crossed at the light. Ethan positioned himself on the side closest to traffic. An old habit from walking with his grandmother years ago. He had not thought about the habit in decades, but his body remembered. Annie did not notice, which was the point of such things. At the little store with the blue door, Annie slowed. The windows were dark and a handwritten sign said closed until further notice. "Mr. Paul used to give Grandma day-old bread," Annie said. "But his store is closed now. Do you know why?" He said the rent went up. Ethan did not answer immediately. He looked at the closed door. The faded lottery sign, the empty metal rack where newspapers had once been. He had seen hundreds of places like it from car windows and quarterly reports. A small business closes. A block loses more than bread. It loses one more person who knew people by name. Annie turned down a narrow street lined with older houses. Some had Christmas lights. Some had plastic sheets taped over the windows. Some had porches stacked with shovels, salt bags, and bicycles waiting for spring. "That one," Annie said. The house was small, pale yellow once, though weather had taken most of the color. The front steps had been cleared enough for a path. A metal railing leaned slightly to one side. In the front window, a curtain had been pinned up where the rod had slipped. Before they reached the porch, Annie stopped and looked at Ethan. "Grandma doesn't like people thinking we can't do things." Ethan nodded. "Then we won't talk to her that way. She might say we have enough." "Does she?" Annie looked at the paper bag in Ethan's hand, then at the house. "Not warm enough." "That's different," Ethan said. Megan stepped closer. "Do you want me to knock?" Annie shook her head. "I can." She climbed the 2 steps and opened the front door carefully, the way a child does when someone inside may be sleeping. "Grandma, I'm back." Warmth did not come out to meet them. The air inside was still and cold, carrying the faint smell of old wood, tea, and menthol. Ethan stepped in after Annie, only when she turned and waved him forward. The living room was tidy in the way poor homes often are when the people inside still insist on order. A folded blanket lay on the couch. A Bible sat on the side table beside a mug with the tiag string wrapped around the handle. Near the window was an old armchair, and in it sat Grandma Rose. She was awake, wearing a gray sweater over a house dress and a scarf tied around her hair. Her shoulders were wrapped in a thin brown blanket. Her face sharpened with surprise when she saw Ethan and Megan, but her voice stayed steady. "Annie Carter," she said, "you brought company." Annie went straight to her. "I brought socks, so I see." Rose looked from the bag to Ethan. "And who might you be, sir?" Ethan set the bag on the floor beside the chair, not on her lap, not as if presenting charity. "Ethan Whitmore, ma'am." Rose's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Whitmore like the store?" "Yes, ma'am." Rose turned her eyes to Annie. "Baby, did you trouble this gentleman?" "No, Grandma, I asked first." Megan stepped in gently. She was very polite. "Mrs. Carter." "Rose is fine," the older woman said. Then to Ethan. "And I appreciate whatever kindness you think you're doing, but we don't make a habit of taking things from strangers." "I respect that," Ethan said. Rose studied him. "Do you?" "Yes, ma'am. I also respect a child who walks 4 blocks in December because she wants her grandmother's feet warm." That quieted the room. Annie knelt by the bag and pulled out the gray socks. "These are the ones. They're good ones. The store doesn't sell bad socks." Rose looked at Megan and Megan gave a small awkward nod. "That's true." A corner of Rose's mouth moved. "Well, I'm glad to hear commerce still has standards." Ethan liked her immediately. Annie slipped off Rose's old sock with care. The heel had worn thin enough to show skin. She unfolded the new pair and worked one over Rose's foot. Slow and focused, Megan crouched to help with the second. Rose let them, though Ethan could see it cost her pride something, not because she was ungrateful. Because needing help in front of strangers is its own kind of weather. When both socks were on, Annie sat back on her heels. "Are they warm?" Rose moved her toes, her voice softened. "They are." Annie smiled then, a full smile, bright enough to make the cold room feel briefly less cold. Ethan looked toward the wall heater. It was silent. "How long has the heat been out?" he asked. Rose's face closed a little. "A few days." "Has the landlord sent anyone?" "He said he would." When Rose looked at him carefully, "Mr. Whitmore, I know that tone. Men use it when they are about to start fixing more than they were asked to fix. My grandmother used to say, I had a bad habit of that." Was she right? Usually. Rose adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. "Then, let me say this plainly. We are not helpless. I didn't think you were. We are having a hard week. I can see that. That is not the same as being helpless. No, ma'am, Ethan said. It isn't. The answer seemed to satisfy her enough that she did not send him out. Megan's phone rang. She looked at the screen. It's Lisa. Annie turned. Mama. Megan answered and spoke quickly, calmly, giving the facts before worry could fill the spaces. Miss Carter, this is Megan from Whitmore Market. Annie is safe. She's home with your mother. I'm here with Mr. Whitmore, the owner. Nothing bad happened. She came to buy socks for Mrs. Rose, and we wanted to make sure she got home safely. There was a pause. Lisa's voice came through faintly, fast, and tense. Megan listened. Yes, ma'am. She's right here. She handed the phone to Annie. Hi, Mama, Annie said. I got the socks. The good ones. Ethan looked away to give the child privacy, but he heard Lisa's voice soften through the speaker. Annie listened then said, No, ma'am. I didn't cross on red. Mr. Whitmore walked on the car side. Rose looked at Ethan when she heard that. Something in her expression changed by a small degree. Annie handed the phone back to Megan. Megan explained the address, the heat, and the store incident in careful language that music did not make Lisa feel accused. When she hung up, she said she's on her way. Her interview ended early. Rose closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them. That girl has been walking all morning in shoes not made for snow. I'd like to help with the heater, Ethan said. Rose began to object, but Annie touched the new socks on her grandmother's feet and said, Maybe just the heater, Grandma. Rose looked at the child, then at Ethan. Just the heater, she said. Ethan nodded. Well, start there. But as he took out his phone to call someone who could come that afternoon, he looked at the thin blanket, the quiet heater, the worn sock lying on the floor, and the glass jar on the coffee table with $120 inside. He already knew they would not stop there. Lisa Carter arrived 22 minutes after Megan's call. Out of breath, but trying not to show it, she came up the porch steps with a folder pressed to her chest and snow melting on the shoulders of her blue blouse. Her shoes were wet around the edges, the kind meant for church basement and office lobbies, not Cleveland sidewalks in December. When she opened the door, her eyes found Annie first, then Grandma Rose in the armchair, then Megan, then Ethan Whitmore standing near the quiet wall heater with his phone in his hand. For 1 second, no one spoke, then Annie ran to her. Mama, I got the socks. Lisa dropped to one knee and pulled her close. She did not scold. She held Annie long enough to count her breaths, then drew back and looked at her face. You walked to the store by yourself. Annie nodded. Serious now. Grandma was cold. Lisa closed her eyes for half a second. When she opened them, the worry was still there. But so was something softer. Baby, you don't leave the house without telling somebody. I left a note. That is not the same thing. I know. Rose cleared her throat from the chair. She did wrong on the leaving. She did right on the loving. We can discuss both after your shoes dry. Lisa looked at her mother's feet and saw the new gray socks. The sight quieted her more than any explanation could have. She touched Annie's cheek, then stood. Miss Ellis told me some of it on the phone, Lisa said, turning to Ethan. I appreciate you walking her back. Ethan nodded. Of course, the socks. You're welcome. Lisa noticed the bag near the chair. That's more than socks. There are gloves and a blanket. Her posture changed. Not rude. Guarded. Ethan had seen that look before in people who had been offered help that later came with a hook. I didn't ask for all that. Lisa said. No, Ma. My daughter shouldn't have either. She didn't. Lisa looked at Megan. Megan spoke before the question was asked. She only asked about the socks. She tried to pay what she had. Lisa's fingers tightened around the folder, and somebody at that store made her feel like she had to explain herself. Megan did not look away. Yes. The room grew still. Outside, a truck passed and sprayed slush against the curb. Lisa took a breath. I'm not trying to be ungrateful, Mr. Whitmore. But I've had people help before. Some of them wanted a story. Some wanted a thank you loud enough for other folks to hear. Some wanted to feel good for 10 minutes and then disappear. I understand. Do you? I'm trying to. Rose watched him from the chair. That is at least an honest answer. Annie had gone back to the coffee table and was setting the glass jar beside Grandma Rose's mug. $1.20 sat inside it like a small witness. Ethan looked at Lisa's folder. Were you coming from an interview? Lisa gave a short laugh without much humor. 3. 1 diner, 1 nursing home, 1 office cleaning company. The diner said they'd call. The nursing home said they needed nights. But I can't leave Annie and Mama all night. The cleaning company said they'd keep my application. Rose said, which means they put it in a drawer. Mama, I'm old, not confused. Megan smiled despite herself. Ethan stepped closer to the wall heater but did not touch it. I called a technician. He's on his way. I'll cover the repair. Lisa shook her head at once. No, The landlord needs to cover it. That's his responsibility. You're right. Then he should pay. He should. But your mother shouldn't sit in a cold house while everyone argues about responsibility. Lisa looked away. That landed where she did not want it to. Rose adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. He has a point, baby. He has money, Lisa said. People with money always have points. Ethan accepted that without offense. That's often true. Lisa turned back to him. Surprised he did not defend himself, he continued. So, let me be clear. If the landlord is legally responsible, my attorney can help make sure he answers for it. But the heat can be fixed today. Those are two separate things. Annie looked from her mother to Ethan. Can heat come today? If the problem isn't too large, Ethan said, what if it is? Then we find another safe place for tonight. Lisa's head came up. We are not going to a shelter. I didn't say shelter. What did you mean? A hotel or a short-term apartment? Somewhere warm. Lisa let out a slow breath. Mr. Whitmore, you don't know us. No, I know what I saw. A broken heater, a sick woman, a child carrying coins in a jar, a mother walking through snow looking for work. He paused. That's enough to know nobody in this house needs another speech about patience. Rose's eyes stayed on him. Before Lisa could answer, Rose coughed. It began small, then tightened in her chest. She leaned forward, one hand on the armrest. Annie moved quickly to the side table. Inhaler, Grandma. Rose took it, used it, and sat back. She waved one hand in the air as if annoyed by her own lungs. I'm all right. Lisa was beside her now. You're not all right. I am sitting upright and arguing. That counts for something. It counts for you being stubborn. It is a family trait. Megan looked at Ethan. He had gone quiet, watching Rose's breathing with the attention of a man counting more than seconds. Mrs. Carter, he said gently. Have you seen a doctor recently? Rose gave him a look. Doctors like appointments. Appointments like insurance. Insurance likes paperwork. We have been acquainted, not close. Lisa rubbed her forehead. Mama. Ethan took his phone out again. There's an urgent care clinic 10 minutes from here in Cleveland. Mercy is close. Rose's voice sharpened. I am not going to the hospital because my feet were cold. No, Ethan said. You would go because breathing matters. The room held that sentence. Lisa looked at her mother. Then at the quiet heater, then at Annie standing beside the armchair with both hands folded in front of her. Annie said, Grandma, maybe just let them listen to your chest. Rose looked at the child for a long moment. Then the fight eased out of her shoulders. Just listening, she said. Ethan nodded, just listening to start. The heating technician arrived before the medical transport Ethan requested. He was a broad man named Frank with a tool bag, snow on his boots, and the careful manners of someone raised to wipe his feet before entering any home. He examined the heater, checked the wiring, removed the front panel, and frowned. This unit should have been serviced before winter, he said. Filter's bad, ignition's failing, and this connection here isn't safe. Lisa crossed her arms. Can it be fixed? Some of it today enough to get safe heat running. Maybe long-term. This landlord owes you a replacement, Rose muttered. I knew that man was allergic to doing right. Frank pretended not to hear, but his mouth twitched. Ethan asked, can you make it safe tonight? I'll know in 20 minutes. Do it. Frank looked at Lisa, not Ethan. Ma'am, you okay with me working on it? Lisa appreciated that he asked her. Yes, please. When the medical team arrived, Rose tried to sit taller. The paramedic, a woman in her 40s with calm eyes, greeted her as Mrs. Carter and asked permission before checking her oxygen level. That small respect changed the air in the room. Your oxygen is lower than I like. The paramedic said, not an emergency right this second, but with the cold and asthma. I'd feel better if a doctor looked at you. Rose sighed. Everybody in this room has decided to gang up on an old woman. Annie leaned against her knee. Not gang up. Help. Rose touched Annie's hat. You always were particular about words. Lisa knelt beside the chair. Mama, please. That did it. Rose looked at her daughter's wet shoes, her tired face, the folder of rejected applications on the table. And then at Annie's new hope sitting there in a paper bag from Whitmore Market. All right, she said. But nobody throws away my tea. Annie smiled. I'll save it. Lisa helped Rose into her coat. Megan folded the new blanket over Rose's lap for the ride. Ethan stood back, careful not to take over the room. He had done enough taking over in his life to recognize the shape of it. At the door, Lisa paused beside him. I don't know what this is, she said quietly. It's help. That word can get complicated. Yes, Ethan said. So, we'll keep it simple. Your mother gets checked, your heat gets fixed, then we talk about the rest. Lisa studied him. And what do you get? Ethan looked at Annie, who was placing the glass jar carefully into her coat pocket before leaving. I get to not look away, he said. Lisa did not answer, but she did not argue either. Outside, the snow had thickened. Frank stayed behind with the heater. Megan locked the door after making sure Annie had her key. The medical team helped Rose down the steps with care, and Annie walked beside her, holding the edge of the blanket as if that could keep it from slipping. Ethan followed them to the curb. For most of his life, problems had come to him as numbers, costs, losses, risks, projections. But this one had arrived as a child with a jar of coins and a question about socks. As the ambulance pulled away without sirens, Lisa rode with Rose and Megan took Annie in Ethan's car behind them. Ethan stood on the sidewalk a moment longer, looking at the small yellow house with the broken heater and the patched window. Then his phone buzzed. A message from his assistant appeared. Should I reschedule the regional directors? Ethan typed back, tomorrow morning, full attendance, store conduct, emergency winter policy, and manager review. He sent it, slid the phone into his coat, and walked to the car. The socks had warmed Rose's feet. Now the truth was beginning to warm something harder to reach. At Cleveland Mercy Hospital, the waiting room smelled of coffee, hand sanitizer, and wet coats. The place was busy in the ordinary winter way with older people coughing into tissues, parents filling out forms, nurses calling names from doorways, and a television mounted high on the wall showing the local weather with the sound turned low. Lisa sat with Annie beside her, one arm around her daughter's shoulders and the job folder on her lap. The folder had softened at the corners from being carried all morning. Every few minutes, Lisa looked toward the double doors where the paramedics had taken Rose. Annie held the glass jar with both hands. Megan sat on her other side, still in her Whitmore Market vest under her coat. Ethan stood near the vending machines with his phone in his hand, not making calls yet, just watching the room. He had been in hospitals before, but usually in private wings or donor receptions where people wore suits and spoke softly around flower arrangements. This was different. This was the part of medicine where people waited under fluorescent lights and tried to look calm while doing math in their heads. A nurse came through the doors. Family for Rose Carter. Lisa stood at once. That's my mother. She's stable. The nurse said the doctor wants to keep her for observation. Cold air likely aggravated her asthma and her oxygen levels need watching. She's alert and asking whether anyone saved her tea. Annie looked up. I did. The nurse smiled. Good. She seemed concerned about that. Lisa let out a breath that changed her whole face. Can we see her in a few minutes? The doctor will speak with you first. Lisa nodded, but her fingers tightened around the folder. Ethan saw it. Miss Carter. She looked at him. What are you thinking? Lisa almost gave the answer people give when they do not want to be a burden. Then she seemed too tired for it. I'm thinking about the bill. Megan looked down at her hands. Lisa continued, not loudly. I'm thinking she needs to stay. And I'm thinking if she stays, there's a bill. If there's a bill, I'm thinking which one doesn't get paid. Rent, gas, lights, food. That's what I'm thinking. Ethan nodded once. She stays. Lisa's eyes sharpened. You don't get to decide that. No, you do. I meant the money won't be the reason she leaves. We don't even know what it costs yet. I'll cover it. Lisa looked away, jaw tight. You keep saying things like that because I mean them. That doesn't make them easy to take. I know. No, Mr. Whitmore, you don't. She lowered her voice because Annie was beside her, but the words kept their weight. Taking help sounds simple to people who have never had it used against them. Later, Ethan accepted that, then put conditions on it. Lisa blinked. What? Tell me what would make it feel less like a trap. Megan looked at him then, surprised. Lisa studied his face. No cameras, no reporters, no picture of my child on some company page. Agreed. No speeches about how grateful we are. Agreed. And nobody talks to my mother like she's some helpless old woman. Ethan glanced toward the double doors. I don't think your mother would allow that anyway. Despite herself, Lisa gave a tired half smile. No, she would not. Then we agree. Before Lisa could answer, the doctor came over with a tablet in one hand. He was a middle-aged man with silver at the temples and a calm voice that sounded practiced without being cold. Miss Carter, I'm Drive. Levan, your mother is doing better, but I'd like to keep her overnight. The cold exposure has made her asthma flare, and I want to make sure the medication holds. Lisa nodded. If she stays overnight, she'll be okay. That's the goal. She also needs a working heat source before she goes home. Cold air is the problem here as much as anything medical. Ethan said a technician is there now. I'll have confirmation soon. Doctor. Levin glanced at him, then back to Lisa, making clear she was the person he was speaking to. Good. We'll also send her home with medication instructions and a follow-up appointment. Lisa asked the question she had been holding. Does she need anything today that insurance might not cover? We'll have billing speak with you. Ethan stepped in only then. Billing can speak with me. The doctor waited for Lisa's response. Lisa's shoulders rose and fell. For today, she said. Just today. Let him. Doctor. Levin nodded. All right. Annie tugged lightly at Lisa's sleeve. Can Grandma wear the socks in the hospital? Lisa looked at the nurse. She can, the nurse said. As long as they have grips if she walks. But for the bed, warm socks are fine. They're good socks, Annie said. I believe you. When they were allowed into Rose's room, Annie entered first, quiet but eager. Rose lay propped against pillows with the gray socks on her feet and the new blanket folded across her knees. She looked smaller in the hospital bed, but her eyes were clear. Well, Rose said, this is a lot of fuss over cold feet. Lisa crossed the room and kissed her forehead. You know it wasn't just your feet. Rose looked at Annie. Did you save my tea? Yes, it's on the table. Then the day is not entirely lost. Annie climbed onto the chair beside the bed, holding the jar on her lap. The doctor says you have to stay one night. So I heard. You should listen. Rose raised an eyebrow. That right? Yes, because breathing comes first. Ethan, standing near the door, looked at Lisa. Lisa looked back at him and neither of them said anything. Rose turned her head toward Ethan. That's your line. I may have said it. It's a good one. Annoying, but good. Megan stood near the wall, unsure whether she belonged in the room. Rose noticed. Cashier girl. Megan straightened. Yes, ma'am. You came all the way here. Yes, ma'am. Rose watched her for a moment. You look like someone carrying more than her coat. Megan's face changed. I should have helped sooner. Maybe, Rose said, but you're here now. Don't waste now by staring too long at then. Megan nodded, eyes bright but steady. Yes, ma'am. Ethan's phone buzzed. He stepped into the hallway to answer. It was Frank, the heating technician. Tell me, Ethan said. The unit's unsafe as it sits, Frank replied. I can get temporary heat running tonight, but this system needs replacement. Whoever owns this property has been ignoring it. Can the house be warm before they return? Yes, I'll bring in portable heaters, too. Safe ones, not those old fire starters people buy cheap. Do it. Send every invoice to my office. There are other houses on this block with the same setup. I can see 2 units from the alley that look just as bad. Ethan was silent for a beat. Check them. Need tenant permission. Ask respectfully. If they agree, inspect them. I'll cover the inspection. Frank gave a low whistle. That's a bigger job. I know. Ethan hung up and stood in the hallway watching nurses move between rooms. A man in a veteran's cap shuffled past with a cane. A woman argued, softly, with an insurance representative on speakerphone. A child laughed at something on a tablet near the vending machines. The world was full of people managing what they should not have had to manage alone. When Ethan returned to Rose's room, Lisa was sitting by the bed, Annie leaning against her side. Megan had gone to get coffee for everyone who wanted it, though Rose had declared hospital coffee. An insult with a lid. The heater, Lisa asked. Temporary heat tonight. Full replacement needed. Lisa closed her eyes. Of course. I asked the technician to inspect nearby homes, too. Only with permission. Rose looked at him. You move fast. I have people who answer when I call. That must be something. It is, Ethan said. And today I'm noticing how much of life depends on whether someone answers. Lisa looked at him less guarded than before, but not unguarded. Why are you doing all this? Ethan thought of the scarf, the coins, his grandmother's hands. Because I almost walked past it, he said. Not today maybe, but for years, stores, neighborhoods, people. I looked at reports and numbers, and thought I understood what was happening under my own signs. Rose studied him, and now I saw a child try to buy dignity for $1.20. The room quieted. Annie looked down at the jar. I didn't know dignity costs that much. Rose reached for her hand. It doesn't, baby. That's the trouble. Folks keep putting prices on things that should already belong to people. Lisa looked at her mother, then at Ethan. My interview today ended early because they said the position was filled. I'm sorry. I'm not telling you. So, you'll fix it. I know. I'm telling you because tomorrow I'll go somewhere else. Ethan nodded. And if you're willing, I know of a cleaning position at my corporate office. It has benefits and a steady schedule. You would interview like anyone else. If you're qualified, you get the job. If not, I won't pretend. Lisa's expression tightened, but not with anger this time, with thought. I don't want pity. I'm not offering pity. I'm offering work. Rose gave a small nod from the bed. Work is different. Lisa looked at Annie, who was listening without pretending not to. We can talk about it tomorrow. That's fair. Megan returned with coffee. Cocoa for Annie and hot water for Rose, who approved of hot water more than hospital coffee. They sat together in the small room while snow collected on the window ledge outside. Nobody called it a miracle. Nobody needed to. It was only a hospital room, a pair of warm socks, a mother weighing pride against necessity, and a rich man beginning to understand that money could open doors. But respect decided how a person entered them. The next morning began with the sound of Lisa's phone buzzing against the metal arm of the hospital chair. She had fallen asleep sitting up, one hand still resting near Annie's coat, the job folder tucked under her elbow so it would not slide to the floor. Annie slept curled in the chair beside her, the glass jar held against her stomach with both hands. Inside Rose's room, the lights had been dimmed and the steady sounds of the hospital made a tired kind of peace. The phone buzzed again. Lisa opened her eyes and reached for it before it woke Annie. The screen showed a message from a neighbor named Mrs. Bell. "Girl, is this Annie?" Below the words was a video. Lisa tapped it. The clip was only 14 seconds long. It showed Annie standing at the counter in Whitmore Market with the jar in her hands. It did not show the long walk through snow. It did not show Grandma Rose's cold room. It did not show Annie asking for cheaper socks or Megan shaking the jar or the way the child tried to explain herself. It showed only Ethan Whitmore placing a bag on the counter, Annie looking small beside it and a few customers watching. The caption read, "Little girl gets billionaire owner to buy her free winter stuff at Whitmore Market." Lisa sat straighter. Under the video, comments had already started. Some people wrote kind things. "God bless that man. Poor baby." Somebody raised her right. Others did what people often did when a story had room for cruelty. Where was her mother? Kids are trained to do this now. Bet those socks get sold before dinner. Why was she alone in a store? Lisa turned the phone face down on her lap. For a moment, she did not move. Her face gave away almost nothing, but Megan, walking back from the vending machine with a paper cup of coffee, saw the change in her shoulders. "You okay?" Megan asked softly. Lisa looked at her. Somebody posted a video. Megan stopped. Of Annie, not her name. Not yet. Lisa's voice stayed low, but it's her face. Megan set the coffee down. "I'm sorry. You didn't post it." "No, but I was there." Lisa looked through the glass toward Rose's room. Then down at Annie, still asleep. "People don't need much to decide who you are. 14 seconds is plenty." Megan sat beside her, careful to leave space. "Does Mr. Whitmore know?" "Not yet." As if the sentence had called him, Ethan came down the hallway holding 2 paper cups and a folder from the nurse's station. He had changed nothing from the night before except his tie was gone and his coat was folded over one arm. He looked like a man who had slept badly and decided work was more useful than rest. Lisa handed him the phone without a word. Ethan watched the clip once, then he read the comments. His face did not change much, but his eyes did. "Who posted it?" he asked. "Somebody in the store, I guess. I'll find out." Lisa took the phone back. "That won't put it back in the bottle." "No," Ethan said, "it won't. I don't want my child turned into a lesson for strangers." "She won't be." "You can't promise that." He paused. "You're right. I can promise I won't use her that way and I can have my company make a statement without naming her, showing her, or making her carry the story." Lisa looked tired enough to be older than she was. "People will still talk." "Yes, and some will say ugly things anyway." "Yes." She looked at him sharply, maybe expecting comfort. Ethan gave her something else, but we can tell the truth clearly enough that the ugliness has less room to stand. Before Lisa answered, Annie stirred. She opened her eyes, saw the adults looking serious, and sat up. "Is Grandma okay?" Lisa immediately softened. "Grandma's okay. She's sleeping." Annie nodded, then noticed Lisa's phone. "Did Mama get a job call?" "Not yet, baby." Ethan crouched near the chair, not too close. "Your mother and I are going to handle some grown-up things today. You didn't do anything wrong." Annie studied him. "Is it about the socks?" "It's about how people talk when they don't know the whole story." Annie accepted that, though not completely. "Grandma says people should ask before they tell." "Your grandma is right again." Rose's voice came from the doorway of her room. "I am right often enough that somebody ought to start writing it down." She stood with one hand on the doorframe wearing her hospital gown, robe, and gray socks. A nurse was beside her, ready to assist if needed. But Rose looked determined to arrive under her own power. Lisa rose. "Mama, you're supposed to call the nurse." "I did. She's right here." The nurse smiled. She negotiated a short walk. Rose looked at Ethan. "What has everybody frowning before breakfast?" Lisa hesitated. Rose held out her hand. "Give it here." Lisa passed her the phone. Rose watched the clip, then read 2 or 3 comments before handing it back. "Folks sure do like building houses with half a brick," Rose said. Megan blinked. "Half a brick? They take one piece of a thing and act like they built the whole truth." Rose eased into the chair the nurse brought. "That video doesn't know my house was cold. It doesn't know Annie counted coins. It doesn't know Lisa has been walking all morning looking for work. It doesn't know anything worth knowing," Lisa said. "That snorts won't stop people." "No, but other people's mouths are not our steering wheel." Annie leaned against her mother's side. "Are they mad?" "No," Lisa said. Rose looked at her daughter. "Don't lie." Children can feel the shape of a lie even when they don't know the words. Lisa exhaled. Some people are talking without knowing. Annie thought about that. Can we tell them Grandma needed socks? Lisa brushed a braid back from Annie's face. Maybe, but we decide how much we tell. Ethan nodded. Exactly. His phone rang. The screen showed Whitmore Market Regional Operations. Ethan stepped a few feet away but did not leave the hallway. Whitmore. A man's voice spoke fast enough that Lisa could hear only pieces. Video. Social media. Brand exposure. Store-level misunderstanding. Ethan listened for 10 seconds. Then he said, "Stop." The hallway around him seemed to quiet. No one from corporate will comment on that child. No one uses her image. No one calls this a feel-good story. Pull the security footage. Preserve audio. Identify who recorded and posted from inside the store if it was an employee. And schedule a manager conduct review. Full team. He listened again. No, we are not thanking the public for their concern. We are finding out why a child with a jar of coins was treated like a problem in one of my stores. He ended the call. Rose watched him. You always talk to people like that. Only when they start polishing the wrong side of the silver. That earned a small sound from Rose that was almost approval. Megan stood. Mr. Whitmore, I need to tell you something. Ethan turned to her. I think the cameras got audio at least near the front register. Dale had them upgraded last month after that lottery ticket dispute. Good. Megan took a breath. And Kyle said things, too. Not just Dale. I didn't stop it. Lisa looked at her. Not kindly, not cruelly, just directly. Megan's voice got quieter. I should have. Rose said, yes. Megan flinched, but Rose continued. And now you should tell the truth. That's not the same thing as fixing yesterday. But it's what today is asking from you. Megan nodded. I'll give a statement. Whatever they need, Ethan said. You won't be punished for telling the truth. I'm not just worried about punishment. Megan said, I'm worried. I'm the kind of person who waited for permission to do right. Nobody rushed to rescue her from that sentence. That made it stronger. Doctor. Lean arrived with Rose's chart and gave an update. Her oxygen had improved, but he wanted one more treatment and another reading before deciding whether she could leave that evening or stay another night. Rose accepted this with a sigh dramatic enough to make Annie smile. After the doctor left, Ethan asked Lisa if he could speak with her in the hall. She agreed. They stood near the vending machines close enough that Lisa could still see Annie. I want to issue a correction today, Ethan said. Not a press event, a statement. It will say a child was treated without the dignity every customer deserves. That the company is reviewing the incident and that no child's image should be shared for entertainment. Lisa crossed her arms. Will it say she was black? Ethan paused. Do you want it to? I want you to understand that part without needing me to dress it up for your lawyers. I do understand. Do you? Her voice stayed calm. Because people will say this is about money or parenting or store policy. But my daughter walked in with old shoes and brown skin and folks had already decided what kind of story she was telling. Ethan took that in. You're right. He said the statement will name bias without turning Annie into proof. Lisa looked at him for a long moment. That's a narrow road. Yes. Walk it carefully. I will. Back in Rose's room, Annie had taken the jar out and placed it on the table beside the hospital water pitcher. The coins caught the overhead light. Rose tapped the glass lightly. You keep that, baby. For what? For remembering. Not the bad part. The part where you tried. Annie looked at the jar. It still wasn't enough. Rose touched her hand. Money wasn't. You were in the hallway. Ethan heard the words and looked away. His phone buzzed again with a message from his assistant. Security footage available, audio included. Ethan stared at the screen. The world had seen 14 seconds without the truth. Now the truth had a voice. And this time he intended to make sure people heard all of it. Megan returned to Whitmore Market a little after noon, though her shift was not supposed to start until 2 o'clock. The store looked the same from the parking lot. Red letters over the door, salt scattered near the entrance, posters for coffee and lottery tickets taped to the glass. Inside, customers moved through the aisles as if nothing had changed. A man bought windshield washer fluid. A woman compared soup cans. 2 teenagers argued over which chips to get. The world did not stop just because one small thing had gone wrong at a counter. That bothered Megan more than she expected. She stood outside for a moment with both hands in her coat pockets. Her breath showed in front of her. She had gone home after leaving the hospital, changed her shirt, sat on the edge of her bed, and tried to convince herself that telling Ethan Whitmore the truth would be enough. But enough was a slippery word. It changed depending on who had been hurt and who had only been uncomfortable. When she stepped inside, Kyle was behind the register. He looked up and frowned. You're early, so are you talking to me now or just around me? Kyle's face tightened. I didn't do anything. Megan kept walking toward the back office. That's what everybody says when they did something small enough to hide behind. He called after her. I was following policy. She stopped and turned. No, Kyle, you were enjoying policy. That landed. He looked away first. The back office door was open. Dale Harkin sat at the desk with his phone in one hand and a company tablet in front of him. His face had the stiff, prepared look of a man who had been rehearsing his side of the story. Megan, he said. Corporate called. They're overreacting. She stepped in but did not sit. They asked me for a statement. I figured. Dale leaned back. Just tell them what happened. Kid didn't have enough money. You followed procedure. I backed you up. End of story. That's not the whole story. It's the part that matters to the company. Megan looked at the security monitor on the wall. The front register appeared in grainy color. The counter, the coffee station, the cardboard winter display. She could see the exact place Annie had stood with the jar. No, she said, it's the part that protects you. Dale set his phone down. Careful. The word came out calm, which made it worse. Megan felt her pulse in her throat. She had been afraid of Dale for months. Not because he shouted often, but because he knew how to make a schedule hurt. He knew how to cut 2 hours here, deny a shift there, make someone feel grateful for a job that barely carried them through the week. I am being careful, Megan said. That's why I'm telling the truth. Dale's mouth moved like he had more to say, but the office phone rang before he could. He picked it up. Yes, this is Dale. His face changed. Megan did not need to hear Ethan's voice to know who was on the other end. Dale sat straighter. Yes, sir, I'm here. No, sir, I didn't leave. Another pause. Longer. I understand there's footage, but footage doesn't show context. Megan watched him listen. Yes, sir. Dale's eyes flicked to her. Yes, she's here. He held out the phone. Mr. Whitmore wants you. Megan took it. Megan Ellis speaking. Ethan's voice was steady. Thank you for coming in. Are you comfortable giving your statement from the office? She looked at Dale. No, she said. Then step outside or use the break room. I'll have human resources join the call. You will not be required to speak in front of Dale. Something unclenched in her chest. Thank you. She handed the phone back to Dale. He wants you to wait for hour. Dale took it slowly. Megan left the office and walked to the break room. It was barely a room really, just a narrow space with a microwave, a dented table, a corkboard full of expired notices, and a refrigerator that hummed too loudly. She sat down, placed her phone on speaker, and joined the call. When Ethan's assistant sent the link, 2 faces appeared on the screen. Ethan Whitmore and a woman named Denise Park from Human Resources. Ethan sat in what looked like a hospital hallway behind him. People passed now and then, coats over their arms, paper cups in hand. Denise spoke first. Miss Ellis, we're going to record this statement with your permission. You have it. You were not under discipline for making this statement. We want an accurate account of what happened. Megan nodded, then remembered they needed words. Okay. Ethan leaned slightly forward. Start from when the child came to the register. Megan told it plainly. The jar, the dollar from the coat pocket, the price. Annie asking for thinner socks, cheaper socks, anything not torn. Megan admitted she said she could not discount them. She admitted she mentioned policy and her fear of losing her job. Denise took notes. Then Megan described Kyle. He said she was begging. Megan said he said people come in with stories and sell things around the corner. He said we'd lose our checks if we gave out merchandise. Did the child ask for free merchandise? Denise asked no. She asked if her money was enough. Then she asked if there was something cheaper. Did she behave aggressively? No. Did she attempt to leave with the item? No. She put it back. Megan swallowed. Actually, she said it on the counter. She couldn't make herself carry it back. Ethan's face remained still, but his eyes lowered for a moment. Denise asked, did you believe her? Megan looked at the table. Someone had scratched initials into the surface years ago. Yes. Why didn't you override the price or purchase the socks yourself? Megan answered honestly. Because I was afraid. Dale watches discounts. He cuts hours when people cross him. I'm behind on bills. I told myself I was following rules, but I was also protecting myself. The room seemed to grow smaller around that sentence. Ethan said, thank you for not cleaning that up. I don't deserve thanks. Maybe not for yesterday, he said. For today, you do. Denise asked for the footage to be saved under incident review. Megan gave the timestamps as best she could. She also mentioned the camera upgrade and the audio range. After the call, Megan stayed in the break room for a minute with the phone dark in front of her. She expected to feel lighter. Instead, she felt clear, which was not the same thing. When she came out, Kyle was near the register pretending to straighten gum. You gave them my name? He asked. I told them what happened. He scoffed. You think Whitmore cares about you? He's a billionaire. He'll fire whoever makes the company look bad and go home. Maybe, Megan said, but that little girl went home to a cold house. I'm done worrying only about who signs my check. Kyle looked at her like he wanted to argue but did not know where to start. The front doors opened and Dale came out of the office with his coat over his arm. His face was red now, not from cold. Denise had placed him on administrative leave, pending review. Megan knew before he said anything. He stopped near her. Hope you're proud. Megan met his eyes. No, just awake. Dale left without another word. The store kept moving. Registers beeped. Coffee brewed. A customer asked whether the 2-for-1 batteries were still on sale. Life returned quickly to places where other people's pain had only passed through. Megan went to the counter and looked at the display of winter socks. There was a gap where Annie's gray pair had been. She pulled 3 more pairs from the rack and set them beside the register. Then she took a piece of receipt paper and wrote in marker, "If you need help staying warm, please ask." She knew it was not official. She knew someone might tell her to take it down. For the first time that day, she was not afraid of that. At Cleveland Mercy, Ethan received the saved audio file while standing beside a vending machine that refused to take his dollar. He almost laughed at the timing. Denise called him as soon as she had reviewed the first clip. "It's clear," she said. "Very clear, Kyle." "Yes, Dolly, not in this clip, but the management culture issue is obvious." Ethan watched Lisa through the glass wall of Rose's room. She was helping her mother adjust the blanket while Annie arranged the jar on the windowsill where sunlight could touch the coins. "Prepare a full review," he said. "Store level, regional, training, loss prevention, language, all of it." "That's bigger than one incident." "It was never one incident." Denise paused. "Understood." Ethan ended the call and opened the audio file. Annie's voice came through first. Small but clear. "Can $1.20 buy warm socks?" Then Megan. Then the coins in the jar. Then Kyle's voice, casual and careless, speaking as though no one worth remembering would ever hear him again. Ethan closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, Rose was watching him from her bed. She lifted one eyebrow as if asking whether the truth had finally found its shoes. Ethan gave a small nod. "Not finished," the nod said, but started. Ethan did not bring up the job again until Rose had eaten half a bowl of chicken soup and complained that the hospital crackers tasted like cardboard with a salt problem. That seemed like the right moment. Lisa was sitting near the window, looking over the discharge instructions the nurse had left on a clipboard. Annie was beside Rose's bed, drawing a crooked Christmas tree on the back of an old hospital menu with a blue pen Megan had found in her purse. The glass jar sat on the windowsill, catching weak afternoon light. Ethan stood near the door, giving the family space. He had learned enough in the last day to know help could feel like crowding if a man stepped too far into a room that was not his. "Miss Carter," he said. Lisa looked up. "Yes, may I speak with you for a few minutes?" "Here or in the hallway?" "Wherever you prefer." Rose glanced at her daughter. "Go on. If he says something foolish, I'll still be here when you get back." Lisa gave her mother a look. "You're enjoying this too much. I'm in a hospital bed. Let me have something." Annie kept coloring. "Grandma says jokes help medicine work." Rose nodded. "That is not medically confirmed, but I stand by it." Lisa stood, smoothing the front of her blouse out of habit. She followed Ethan into the hallway, but stayed near the room where she could still see Annie through the glass. Ethan noticed that and stopped there. "I meant what I said earlier," he began. "There is an opening at my corporate office. Custodial staff, evening shift, but not overnight. Benefits after the probation period. Stable schedule." Lisa folded her arms, not to shut him out completely, but to hold herself steady. "You said I'd interview like anyone else." "Yes. Then why are you telling me instead of having HR post it?" "It is posted. Has been for 9 days. I checked." Lisa looked at him carefully. "And if I apply, they'll know you sent me. They'll know I told you about an open position. They will also know I expect them to evaluate you fairly. That's a thin line." "It is. People like me know thin lines." "Well, Mr. Whitmore, we walk them with grocery bags in both hands." Ethan accepted the correction with a small nod. "Then tell me how to do this without taking your dignity." Lisa's expression shifted. Not softened exactly, more like she had not expected the question. "You can't hand me a job in front of my daughter like I'm being rescued." "I won't. You can't have people at that office whispering that I'm the woman from the sock story." "I won't allow that. You can't pay me less because you think I should be grateful for anything." "No, and you can't pay me more just so you feel better." Ethan almost smiled. "You negotiate well. I've been poor a long time. Poor people negotiate every day with bills, with buses, with landlords, with children who ask why cereal is dinner." The words were not self-pitying. That made them harder to hear. Ethan said the pay range is $21 an hour to start. Health, dental, vision after probation, paid sick time. If you do well, there's a path to lead custodian or facilities coordinator. I'm not promising that, I'm telling you the path exists. Lisa looked through the glass at Annie, who was now showing Rose the Christmas tree drawing. Rose was pretending to study it like a museum painting. I cleaned offices before Annie was born, Lisa said. Hotels, too. People think cleaning is simple because they only notice when it isn't done. My grandmother cleaned houses, Ethan said. She used to say rich people dropped crumbs like they were leaving evidence. Lisa gave a reluctant laugh. Short but real, she wasn't wrong. No, she wasn't. For the first time, Lisa looked at him with curiosity instead of defense. Your grandmother raised you, mostly. My parents were around, but not steady. She was the steady one. She's still living. No, she passed 18 years ago. Lisa nodded, the way people do when they recognize a kind of loss without needing details. I'm sorry, thank you. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded scarf. It was old, dark green, worn thin along one edge, but carefully kept. She bought this for me when I was little, used from a church sale. She counted coins to pay for it. He looked at the scarf, then tucked it back away when I saw Annie with that jar. I remembered standing beside my grandmother while she tried to make not enough become enough. Lisa's guard did not vanish, but something in it loosened. That doesn't mean you owe us. No, Ethan said, it means I know the difference between a handout and a hand reaching back. Lisa looked down at the clipboard in her hand. I have to take care of my mother. Annie's school starts back after break. If the schedule falls apart, I can't do it. Then ask HR about the schedule before anything else. If it doesn't work, say no. You make saying no sound easy. It should be. It often isn't. Inside the room, Rose called through the open door. Lisa, if that man is offering work with benefits, do not stand in the hallway trying to wrestle pride into a crown. Lisa turned. Mama, we are having a private conversation. Rose raised her voice a little more, then closed the door better. Annie looked between the adults. What's benefits? Rose answered before anyone else could. It means if your mama gets sick, the whole world doesn't fall apart quite as fast. Annie nodded as if filing that away. Lisa pressed her lips together, fighting a smile and something more fragile beneath it. Ethan said, the interview can be tomorrow morning or whenever you choose. Lisa looked at him. Tomorrow morning, I'll have Denise Park from HR call you. She's direct, fair, she won't waste your time. Lisa held up one finger. I'll take the interview. That's all I'm accepting right now. That's all I'm offering right now. Rose called again and asked about parking. Lisa closed her eyes. Mama, what parking costs money? Ethan answered toward the room. Employee parking is covered. Rose nodded. Proceed. The interview was scheduled for 9 the next morning. By then, Frank had sent photographs of the heater and a short report. Temporary heat was running. Portable safe heaters had been placed in the living room and bedrooms. 2 neighboring tenants had agreed to inspections and both had serious heating issues. One was an elderly widower named Mr. Alvarez and the other was a young mother with twins. Ethan read the report twice, then sent it to his attorney with a note. Find legal aid contacts. Landlord accountability. Quietly for now. When he returned to Rose's room, Lisa had gone to wash her face, and Annie was helping Rose fold the new blanket, even though Rose would need it again in 10 minutes. Mr. Whitmore, Rose said. Yes, ma'am. You are doing several things at once. I usually do. That is not always a virtue. I've been told. I appreciate the heat. I appreciate the hospital bill. I appreciate the socks. She looked at him over the rim of her glasses. But don't turn my family into one of your projects. Annie looked up from the blanket. Sensing the seriousness, Ethan answered carefully. I don't want to. Wanting is easy. Rich folks can help so loudly that the help becomes another kind of noise. He sat in the chair Lisa had left empty, but only after Rose gestured to it. My intention is to make things right. Rose gave a dry little sound. Justice is a fine word, but it can get unfair when only one side gets to define it. That stayed with him. What would you define it as? He asked. For us, heat that works. Medicine we can afford. My daughter paid for the work she does. My granddaughter not having to explain her heart to strangers at a cash register. Rose paused. And the next child with a jar not being treated like a trick. Ethan nodded slowly. That last part is company-wide. Good. Then start there, too. Lisa returned. And the conversation shifted to practical things. Denise Park called as promised. Lisa took the call in the hallway with her folder open, answering questions about work history, availability, transportation, and references. Her voice changed when she spoke about work. It grew steadier, less defensive, more exact. Yes, ma'am, I can strip and wax floors. Yes, I've used commercial buffers. Yes, I understand chemical labeling. No, I don't need training on basic sanitation, but I'll take whatever training your building requires. Ethan listened from a distance and felt no urge to interfere. That he realized was part of respect, too. After the call, Lisa came back with the interview confirmed. Annie looked up. Do you have a job now? Not yet. I have a chance. Is a chance good? Lisa sat beside her. A fair chance is very good. Annie looked at Ethan. Did you give Mama a fair chance? I'm trying to. Annie seemed satisfied with that. Grandma says trying counts if you keep doing it. Rose pointed one finger at Ethan. Write that one down, too. By evening, Dr. Levin decided Rose should stay one more night. Not because she was in danger, but because her lungs needed a little more time. Rose objected on principle, then accepted when Annie reminded her that hospital blankets were warmer than theirs used to be. Megan came by, after her shift with a small paper bag. I brought tea, she said. Not hospital tea, real tea. Rose inspected the box. You may enter. Megan laughed, then handed Lisa a folded paper. I wrote down everything I told Our. I thought you should know. Lisa took it. Thank you. Megan shifted her weight. I should have done more at the store. Lisa looked at her for a moment. Yes. Megan nodded. Lisa continued. And today you did more. I can hold both. Megan's eyes lowered. I appreciate that. The room settled into a quiet that did not feel empty. Ethan stood near the window, watching snow collect on the ledge outside. His phone buzzed with messages from regional directors, legal counsel, HR, communications, and store operations. For once, none of them felt like interruptions. They felt like doors opening onto rooms he should have entered long ago. On the windowsill, Annie's glass jar sat beside a paper cup of tea. $120 rested at the bottom. Ethan looked at it and understood that the money had never been the smallest thing in the story. The smallest thing had been the moment everyone decided whether to see a child clearly. And the largest thing maybe was what came after they finally did. By morning, Ethan Whitmore's office looked less like the top floor of a company and more like the back table of a town hall. After a hard meeting, reports lay open across his desk: store policies, loss prevention guidelines, training manuals, employee complaints, maintenance invoices from the houses near Annie's block, a legal memo about landlord obligations in Cleveland. At the center of it all sat two things that did not belong in any corporate office. A pair of gray winter socks and a glass jar with $1.20 inside. The jar was not Annie's. Hers remained with her at the hospital. This one Ethan had asked his assistant to find from the company kitchen. Then filled with the same amount in coins. He wanted the directors to see the number before they turned it into language. Denise Park arrived first. She was in her early 40s, direct, organized, and not easily impressed by rich men discovering social problems after breakfast. You slept here? She asked. Not exactly. That means yes. Ethan looked at the reports. What do we have? Denise placed a folder on his desk. Dale is on administrative leave. Kyle has been written up pending final review. Megan's statement matches the audio. Regional management admits there have been complaints about that store. Mostly vague, mostly dismissed as customer frustration. Complaints from whom? Older customers, mothers using assistance cards, teenagers, unhoused people. 2 black customers who said they were followed aisle to aisle. Ethan's face stayed still. And we called that vague. Someone did. Who? Denise opened the folder. Regional supervisor signed off on the dismissals. Ethan looked toward the window. Cleveland spread below him in gray winter light. Rooftops dusted white, traffic moving slowly along wet streets. From up here, hardship became pattern. Down there, it had names. Bring the regional directors in. They're waiting. Good. The meeting began at 9 o'clock. 12 people sat around the long conference table. Some in person, some on the screen: operations, legal, communications, store management, loss prevention, HR, people who usually spoke in numbers and risk categories. Ethan let them settle, then placed the socks and the jar in the middle of the table. No one asked what they were. He said, yesterday, a child came into one of our stores with this much money and asked whether it could buy warm socks for her grandmother. A communications director shifted in her chair. We've drafted language for a public response. I'm sure you have. She stopped. Ethan touched the jar lightly. The coins clicked against the glass. Before anyone uses the phrase isolated incident, I want you to understand something. A child was not humiliated because one employee had a bad minute. She was humiliated because our store had learned to treat certain people as suspicious before they spoke. The room went quiet in the way conference rooms do when everyone understands the meeting has moved away from safe language. The head of loss prevention cleared his throat. Theft has increased in several urban locations. Staff are trained to watch for patterns. Which patterns? Repeated entry without purchase, requests for exceptions, loitering near high-shrink items. Ethan nodded. And when the person is a child asking about socks, that's obviously different. Was it obvious yesterday? No answer. Denise spoke. Then the audio shows the child asked for a cheaper option, a sale, or to have the socks held. She did not ask for free merchandise. She did not attempt to leave with the item. She was still spoken about as if she were running a scam. Legal counsel said, "We should be careful with wording around bias until investigation is complete." Ethan looked at him. Careful, yes. Cowardly, no. The attorney closed his folder halfway, then opened it again. Understood. A regional director leaned forward. What are you proposing? 3 things immediately. First, Dale Harkins is terminated after HR completes procedure. Unless something appears that changes the facts. I doubt it will. Kyle faces disciplinary action and mandatory retraining if retained. Second, every store gets a vulnerable customer protocol before the end of the week. Children, seniors, people in medical distress, anyone asking for warmth, food, or medicine. Staff do not shame them, accuse them, or discuss them like criminals at the counter. The operations head began taking notes. Third, Ethan continued, we create a winter assistance program. Socks, gloves, hats, basic blankets. Stores can provide them without turning the person into a spectacle or forcing employees to choose between humanity and policy. Finance finally spoke across all locations. That's a budget. Yes, a large one. Ethan looked at the jar. Larger than $1.20. No one answered that either, Denise added. We also need anonymous reporting for staff. Megan Ellis stayed silent partly because she feared retaliation over hours. That ends, Ethan said. Managers who punish staff for ethical reporting don't manage here. The communications director asked carefully this time, what about the video online? We issue a statement today. No child's name, no image, no victory lap. What tone? Plain. We failed a customer. The customer was a child. We are reviewing conduct and policy. We will not use her story for promotion. We ask the public not to share her image. The director nodded and mentioned race. Ethan paused. Lisa's words returned to him. People will say this is about money or parenting or store policy. But my daughter walked in with old shoes and brown skin. Yes, he said, but not as decoration. Say we are reviewing how bias affects customer treatment in our stores, especially toward black customers, poor customers, and children. Say it because it's true. The room absorbed that. Some faces looked relieved, others looked worried. Ethan did not care which was which yet. After the meeting, Denise stayed behind. You know, some people will call this an overcorrection. They can call it what they like. Some will say you're admitting liability. I am admitting responsibility. That is not the same thing legally. No, Ethan said, but morally it is close enough for today. Denise closed her folder. Lisa Carter's interview is in 30 minutes. I won't attend. Good. I wouldn't have let you. That almost made him smile. Tell me only whether the process was fair. I can do that. Lisa arrived at the Whitmore corporate office at 8:47, early enough to show respect, and not so early that anyone could say she had nowhere else to be. She wore the same blue blouse, freshly dried and pressed under a dark sweater. Her shoes had been cleaned, though the salt marks could not be fully erased. Her folder was in her hand. The lobby was polished stone, glass, and quiet footsteps. Lisa paused just inside the revolving door, not because she was intimidated, but because places like that had a way of making people check whether they belonged. The security guard looked up. Good morning, ma'am. Can I help you? I'm Lisa Carter. I have a 9 o'clock interview with Miss Park. Yes, ma'am. She left your name. Elevator to 12. I'll call up. He said, ma'am, without strain, without surprise. Lisa noticed upstairs. Denise met her herself. Miss Carter. Denise Park. Lisa shook her hand. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for coming in. Coffee or water? Water, please. The interview lasted 42 minutes. Denise asked about cleaning chemicals, floor equipment, scheduling, prior supervisors, reliability, and safety procedures. Lisa answered clearly. She did not mention any unless asked about availability. She did not ask for sympathy. She explained that evenings could work if she had predictable hours and enough notice. Denise said this position includes some office areas where executives work late. You may be around confidential documents. Is that a problem? No, ma'am. I clean what I'm supposed to clean and don't read what isn't mine. Denise looked up from her notes. That's a good answer. It's the only one. By the end, Denise had already decided, but she followed the process. She left the room, checked references, called the facility's supervisor, and returned. Miss Carter, I'd like to offer you the position pending standard paperwork. Lisa held still. Today, the pay, $21 an hour, 35 hours guaranteed. Benefits after probation, paid sick time begins after 30 days. Parking covered. Lisa looked down at her folder. Her thumb pressed the corner flat. I'll do the work, she said. I believe you. Lisa nodded once. Then I accept. Denise slid the paperwork across the table. Welcome to Whitmore. Lisa signed her name slowly, not because she hesitated, but because she wanted every letter to look like it belonged there. At the hospital, Rose was sitting up when Lisa called. Annie held the phone on speaker. "I got it," Lisa said. Annie's face brightened. "You got the job." "I got the job." Rose closed her eyes and lifted one hand. "Thank you, Lord, and thank you for parking." Lisa laughed then, a real laugh. Tired, but alive, Ethan was standing in the hallway when he heard it. He did not step in. Some moments were not his to enter. Frank's second report came an hour later. Temporary heat was holding at the Carter house. 2 neighboring units had unsafe systems. One tenant had been using the oven for heat. Another had a space heater plugged into an extension cord under a rug. Frank wrote one sentence at the end. "This block needs more than repair. It needs attention." Ethan forwarded it to legal aid, his attorney, and Denise. Then added, "Create emergency winter inspection fund. Partner with churches and tenant groups. No press." That afternoon, the company statement went out. It did not name Annie. It did not show her face. It did not call Ethan a hero. It said a child had not been treated with dignity in a Whitmore Market store. It said the company was reviewing conduct, training, and bias. It asked the public not to share images of minors. It announced that a winter assistance policy would be implemented across stores. Some people praised it, some mocked it, some called it too much, some called it not enough. Lisa read it once, then put her phone down. Rose asked, "Satisfied?" "No." "Good. Satisfaction comes too early for things like this." Annie looked up from her drawing. "Did they say the socks were for you?" Lisa smiled. "No, baby, they didn't tell our business." Annie nodded. "Good. Grandma likes privacy." Rose said, "Grandma likes heat, too. Tell them that part if needed." Near evening, Ethan returned to the hospital with no entourage, no camera, and no announcement. He brought a folder for Lisa with work paperwork, a printed schedule, and information about benefits. He also brought a small tin of tea for Rose because Megan had told him what kind she approved of. Rose examined the tin. "You are learning. I have good teachers. Don't get flattering. It ruins the tea." Lisa took the folder from him. "I got the job, I heard. Did you interfere?" "No." She looked at Denise's signature on the paperwork. "Did you make sure I had a fair shot?" "Yes." Lisa nodded. "Then thank you. You earned the job." "I know," she said. Ethan smiled slightly. "Good." Annie held up her drawing. It showed a house with smoke coming from the chimney, though their house did not have a fireplace. Beside it stood 3 figures and a very large pair of socks. "Is that me?" Ethan asked. "No," Annie said. "That's Grandma. The socks are just big." Rose leaned back against her pillow. Artistic accuracy runs in the family. The room settled into an easy quiet outside the window. Evening gathered over Cleveland, turning the snow along the ledge blue. Ethan stood with his hands in his coat pockets and felt his phone buzzing again. One message after another. Store directors, reporters, lawyers, board members. For once he let them wait. On the windowsill, Annie's jar held its small amount of money. It had failed to buy the socks. It had succeeded at something else. It had made a company count differently. The next morning, Whitmore Market opened 2 hours late. A paper sign on the door said, "Staff meeting, reopening at 10 o'clock." The words were plain, taped at eye level, but people still stopped to read them twice. A man with a newspaper under his arm tried the handle, looked through the glass, then walked away toward the diner down the block. Inside, the lights were on. The coffee machine was off, and the winter display near the front register had been left exactly as it was the day Annie came in, except now there was a small space cleared on the counter. Ethan stood beside it with Denise Park on his right and the Clearsthroat Regional Supervisor, Mark Leland, on his left. Megan stood near the second register. Kyle leaned against the end of the candy aisle with both hands in his jacket pockets, trying to look bored and failing. Dale Harkins had come in through the back door 10 minutes earlier with his coat buttoned wrong and his face set hard. No customers, no cameras, no reporters, just employees, fluorescent lights, and the place where a child had counted coins. Ethan placed 3 things on the counter: a pair of gray winter socks, a glass jar with $1.20 inside, and the printed transcript from the register audio. The coins made a small sound when the jar touched the counter. Several people looked at it. Ethan let the silence sit long enough for everyone to feel where they were standing. 2 days ago, he said, a child came into this store to buy socks for her grandmother. She had $1.20. She asked whether it was enough. It wasn't. No one moved. That could have been the end of it, Ethan continued. A price was a price. A cashier could not change it. A store has rules. Those facts are not the problem. Dale shifted slightly. Ethan looked around the room. The problem is what happened after the facts. A child explained that her grandmother was cold. Instead of being treated like a child trying to care for someone, She was treated like a liar before anyone knew her name. Kyle looked down. Denise handed Ethan a remote. He did not use the store speakers. He played the audio from a tablet placed on the counter. Loud enough for the employees to hear. Annie's voice came first, small and clear. Can $1.20 buy warm socks? Then Megan's answer. The jar shaking. Annie saying she had more in her mother's coat. Her question about cheaper socks. Her question about a sale. Megan explaining policy. Then Kyle's voice casual and careless. Man, is she still asking? First, she's bargaining. Now, she's begging. Megan closed her eyes for 1 second. The audio continued. We've had people doing this all week. Come in with some sad story. Ask for free stuff. Then you see it getting sold 2 blocks over. Ethan stopped the recording. The quiet after it was worse than the sound. Kyle cleared his throat. I shouldn't have said it like that. Ethan turned to him. How should you have said it? Kyle opened his mouth, then closed it. That isn't a trick question, Ethan said. I'm asking whether there was a respectful version of accusing a child of running a scam because she didn't have $6. Kyle's face reamed. I didn't mean her specifically. That may be the most honest part of what you've said. Kyle frowned. Not understanding, Ethan explained. You weren't seeing her specifically. You were seeing a category you had already made in your mind. Poor kid. Black kid story. Problem. That is exactly why we are here. Mark Leland shifted beside Denise. Ethan, we may want to be careful with. Ethan looked at him. With what terminology? Say the word you're avoiding. Mark hesitated. Bias, Denise said. Ethan nodded. Bias, prejudice, racism. When it hides behind suspicion and calls itself experience. If we cannot say it inside this store, we will never fix it outside this room. Dale spoke then. I wasn't even at the counter for most of that. No, Ethan said, but you managed the store that made it feel normal. Dale's jaw tightened. With respect, sir, this neighborhood has real theft. My job is to protect inventory. Your job is also to protect the dignity of customers. Inventory loss is measurable, so is reputation, so is turnover, so are complaints, so is a child's voice on a recording asking if there's anything cheaper than warmth. Dale looked toward Denise. Am I being terminated? Denise answered, your conduct review is complete. You failed to maintain customer dignity standards. Failed to address discriminatory conduct and fostered a retaliatory environment that discouraged employees from reporting concerns. Your employment is terminated effective today. Dale swallowed. For a moment, he looked less angry than stunned. After 8 years, Ethan's voice stayed even. 8 years gave you authority. It did not give you permission. Dale looked around as if someone might defend him. No one did, not because they all disliked him, but because the recording had taken away the safe middle ground. Denise handed him an envelope. Your final paperwork is inside. Mark will escort you to collect personal items from the office. Dale took it. You're making me the villain because the internet got loud. Ethan shook his head. No, I'm holding you responsible because a child got quiet. That ended it. Mark walked Dale to the back. The office door opened, then closed. The store seemed to breathe differently after he left, though nobody relaxed. Ethan turned to Kyle. You were suspended for 3 days without paying completion of mandatory training and review. After that, if you return under a final warning. You will also apologize in writing to the family if they choose to receive it. If they don't, that is their right. Kyle nodded. Yes, sir. Do you understand why? Kyle looked at the jar. Because I talked about her like I already knew her. Yes, I was wrong. Yes, the answer was not cruel. It was clean. Ethan looked at Megan next. She stood straighter, prepared for whatever came. Megan Ellis gave a truthful statement. She also admitted she failed to act when she believed the child. Both things matter. Ethan turned to the rest of the employees. Courage after the fact is not the same as courage in the moment, but truth still matters when it arrives late. Megan's eyes lowered, but she did not hide from it. He continued, no employee in this company should have to choose between doing the humane thing and keeping a schedule. That failure belongs to management and ultimately it belongs to me. That sentence changed the room more than the termination had. Ethan picked up the jar. This amount did not buy socks. It bought a clear view of what our rules look like when they meet someone with less power than we have. He set the jar back down. Starting today, every Whitmore market will follow a vulnerable customer protocol. Children in distress are not dismissed. Seniors in need are not mocked. Customers asking about food, medicine, warmth, or safety are treated with patience. If an employee believes someone needs emergency assistance, they call a supervisor, a guardian, community services, or emergency help as appropriate. They do not shame the person at the register. Denise handed out printed copies of the new policy summary. Ethan went on, we are also launching Warm Feet, Warm Hearts. Each store will carry winter assistance stock, socks, gloves, hats, basic blankets. Managers will have a monthly allowance to provide these items when needed. No photos, no public display, no questions designed to humiliate. The rule is simple: no child should have to prove they are cold. Megan looked up. One of the older employees, a woman named Carla who worked mornings, raised her hand halfway. What if people take advantage? Ethan nodded. It was a fair question, and he treated it like one. Some might. We will track inventory, but we will not build a system so afraid of being fooled that it becomes comfortable being cruel. If we help someone who did not need it, we lose a pair of socks. If we refuse someone who did, we lose something more expensive. Carla nodded slowly. Fair enough. Another thing, Ethan said, there will be anonymous reporting for staff. If a manager retaliates against you for raising a concern about discrimination, unsafe conditions, or mistreatment, that manager will answer for it. Several employees looked at one another. That told Ethan more than any report had. Mark returned alone from the back office, his expression careful. Ethan turned to him. Regional management dismissed complaints from this store. Mark's face stiffened. Some complaints were difficult to verify. That is why patterns matter. A single complaint may be unclear. 10 complaints tell a story. Yes, sir, you'll be part of the review. I understand. I hope so. The meeting ended without applause, which Ethan preferred. Applause would have made it too easy. People took the policy sheets, returned to registers, checked coffee, opened the safe, counted drawers, restocked the shelves. Work resumed, but not quite as before. Megan stayed at the counter. Ethan picked up the gray socks and handed them to her. Put these back on the display, he said. She took them carefully. Yes, sir. And keep the sign. She looked at him, surprised. The handwritten receipt paper still sat near the register. If you need help staying warm, please ask. It needs better wording, Ethan said. But the heart of it stays. Megan nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me for catching up. At 10 o'clock, the doors opened. The first customer was an elderly man in a Navy veteran's cap who came in for coffee and a newspaper. He glanced at the employees, sensed something had happened and said only, "Morning." "Good morning, sir," Megan answered. A mother with 2 children came in next, then a city worker buying batteries. Then the woman who had pulled her purse closer that day. She paused near the register, looked at the winter display, and picked up 2 pairs of children's gloves, at the counter. She spoke quietly to Megan. "I saw that little girl the other day." Megan scanned the gloves. "Yes, ma'am." The woman looked uncomfortable. "I should have said something." Megan did not let her off easily. "A lot of us should have." The woman nodded, paid, and then placed the gloves back on the counter. "For the new program," she said, "if that's allowed." Megan glanced at Ethan, who stood near the coffee station pretending to study a shelf tag. He nodded once. Megan put the gloves in a box Denise had labeled Winter Assistant stock. By noon, there were 3 pairs of gloves, 2 hats, and a $5 bill in the box. It was not much, but it had begun. At Cleveland Mercy, Lisa read the update Ethan sent before he came in person. Dale terminated, Kyle disciplined, policy changed, program launched, no child named. She read it twice, then handed the phone to Rose. Rose adjusted her glasses. Lisa waited. "That all you have for now?" Annie looked up from her hospital. "Coco, did the store get in trouble?" Lisa chose her words. "The store is learning." Annie considered that like school, something like that. Rose handed the phone back. School with harder homework. Ethan arrived an hour later carrying nothing but a folder in the same dark coat. Annie noticed first. "Did you bring socks?" "No," Ethan said. "Today I brought paperwork." Rose sighed. "That is rarely an improvement." He smiled and handed Lisa the folder. Inside were copies of the new policy, the public statement, and contact information for Denise. Lisa looked through it slowly. "You fired him?" she asked. "Yes." Lisa closed the folder. "I don't want Annie thinking people should lose jobs because of her." They didn't lose jobs because of her. Ethan said they faced consequences because of what they did with power. Rose pointed at him. "That sentence is almost worth keeping." Lisa looked toward Annie, who had gone back to stirring cocoa with a plastic spoon. "And the program, Warm Feet, Warm Hearts. It starts now, fully rolled out by next week." Lisa's face held relief and caution together. "Don't let them put her picture on it. They won't. Don't let them make her the poor little girl who changed your company." Ethan nodded. "She is Annie. That's enough." Rose leaned back against her pillow. "You are learning faster than most men with money. High praise. Moderate praise. Don't get comfortable." For the first time that day, Lisa laughed. Ethan looked at the jar on the windowsill. The coin sat at the bottom, quiet and bright under the hospital light. He thought of the matching jar now on the counter at Whitmore headquarters where every director would have to pass it on the way into his office. A child had stood at a counter and asked a question about socks. The answer had changed. Not enough yet, but changed. Rose Carter was discharged from Cleveland Mercy just after noon with a paper bag of medication, a printed list of instructions, and an opinion about every elevator in the building. Too slow, she said as Lisa wheeled her toward the front doors. A person could grow a new problem waiting on that thing. You were the one who said you didn't want to rush, Lisa said. I said I didn't want people rushing me. That is different. Annie walked beside them, holding the glass jar against her coat. The coins inside made a soft sound with each step. Megan had come on her lunch break to say goodbye, carrying a small tin of tea for Rose and a pack of stickers for Annie. Ethan walked a few steps behind the family, close enough to help if asked, far enough not to make himself the center of the leaving. Outside, the air was cold, but clearer than it had been. The snow had stopped during the night, and the hospital entrance had been salted. Ethan's driver waited at the curb, though Lisa had insisted they could take a cab. Rose looked at the black SUV, then at Ethan. That yours? Yes, ma'am. Seats heated? Yes, ma'am. Then for medical reasons, I will not argue. Lisa laughed and helped her mother into the back seat. Annie climbed in beside Rose, careful not to bump the paper bag of medication. She placed the jar in her lap and looked out the window as the hospital pulled away behind them. On the drive home, Ethan did not talk business. Rose asked him where he grew up. He said Cleveland, mostly the west side when he was little. Then wherever his grandmother could afford after that. Rose asked whether he still went to church. Ethan said not as often as he should. Rose said that was the answer of a man who knew better, which meant there was hope for him yet. When the SUV turned onto Annie's street, Lisa leaned forward. The house looked the same from outside, but not entirely. The porch had been cleared properly. The front steps were salted. A new weather strip lined the bottom of the door. Frank's work van sat in the driveway of the house next door and two men were carrying a boxed heater toward Mr. Alvarez's porch. Lisa stared. He's still here. Ethan looked out the window. He found more work than expected. More work for us for the block. Rose turned her head. You didn't say that part. I'm saying it now. Lisa's mouth tightened, but not with anger. It was the look of someone trying to decide whether gratitude could stand beside suspicion without one swallowing the other. Inside, warm air met them at the door. Annie stopped on the threshold. Then she stepped in, held out one hand, and felt the air coming from the vent near the floor. A smile spread across her face slowly, as if she did not want to waste it by letting it come too fast. It's warm, she said. Lisa looked toward the living room. The old heater had been replaced. The windows were sealed with clean clear film, not the peeling tape they had used before. The brown blanket was folded on the armchair, and beside it sat the new, thicker one. On the kitchen counter were groceries. Milk, eggs, chicken, apples, bread, oatmeal, canned soup, tea, and a small bag of oranges. Lisa turned to Ethan. He spoke first. The groceries came from Megan and two other employees. I approved the delivery, but they chose what to send. Rose lifted an orange from the bag and inspected it. Somebody in that store has sense. Several people are learning, Ethan said. Annie ran to the living room vent and sat on the floor in front of it. She held her hands over the warm air, then her feet. Not too close, Lisa said automatically. I'm not. Rose settled into her armchair with care. The gray socks were still on her feet. She looked around the room, taking in every repair the way a woman reads a letter for the second meaning. It is a good thing, she said finally. A hard thing to receive, but a good thing. Lisa stood near the kitchen table. I don't know how to thank people for this much. Ethan took a folded envelope from his coat, but did not hand it to her right away. You don't have to do it all at once. Lisa looked at the envelope. What is that? A proposal. Not cash in an envelope. Not a surprise. A written plan. And you can read, question, accept, change, or reject. Rose sat forward slightly. Now you are speaking my language. Ethan placed the envelope on the table. It covers renters, utilities, medical costs not covered, transportation for work and appointments, and a small education fund for Annie. It also includes a financial counselor if you want one. Nothing requires your family to speak publicly. Nothing gives my company rights to your story. Lisa did not touch it. That's a lot, she said. Yes, too much for one family. Maybe it feels that way. For my company, it is less than we spend printing promotional flyers in a quarter. That doesn't make it small. No, it makes our priorities worth questioning. Rose pointed at the chair across from her. Sit down, Mr. Whitmore. Ethan sat. Rose looked at Lisa. Open it, Mama, open it. Looking is not the same as agreeing. Lisa opened the envelope and read in silence. Annie came to the table but did not interrupt. She watched her mother's face instead of the paper. Lisa read the rent line first, then utilities, then medical, then work transportation, then Annie's education fund. Her eyes stopped there. I didn't ask for school money. No, Ethan said. Annie asked for socks. The rest is what adults should have noticed. Lisa pressed her thumb against the edge of the page. If I take this, people will say I sold my pride. Rose answered before Ethan could. People say many things from warm houses. Lisa looked at her mother. Rose's voice softened. Pride is good when it keeps your back straight. It is dangerous when it keeps food off the table and medicine out of reach. Lisa looked at Annie, who stood with the glass jar hugged to her chest. What do you think, baby? Lisa asked. Annie thought seriously. I think Grandma should have medicine. And you should not walk in snowshoes to ask for jobs anymore. Lisa closed her eyes for a moment, then laughed once. Small and broken around the edges. That is a very practical answer. Grandma says practical is holy on weekdays. Rose nodded. I do say that. Lisa signed nothing that day. She asked questions. Ethan answered them. Rose asked sharper questions. Ethan answered those, too. In the end, Lisa agreed to take the plan home inside the home where she already was, read it again after Annie slept, and speak with the counselor before signing anything. That is fair, Ethan said. It is cautious, Lisa replied. Fair often is. That afternoon, Frank knocked and came in to explain the heater in plain language. He spoke to Lisa, not over her. The replacement was safe, under warranty, and documented. He had also inspected Mr. Alvarez's place in the unit where the twins lived. Ethan had arranged emergency repairs, but legal aid would pursue the landlord for reimbursement and compliance. Rose listened from the armchair. So, the man who ignored one heater may end up paying for several. Frank grinned. That's the hope, ma'am. Hope is fine. Paperwork is better. Yes, ma'am. By evening, Lisa had her first work schedule from Whitmore Corporate. Training would start Monday. 35 hours guaranteed, parking covered, uniform shirts provided. Denise had included a handwritten note. You earned the position. We are glad to have you. Lisa read that line twice. Annie leaned against her side. Does it say you have to wear a name tag? Yes. What will it say? Lisa Carter. Annie smiled. Good. Why good? So people know who you are. Lisa pulled Annie close and kissed the top of her head. A week later, warm feet, warm hearts began at the neighborhood Whitmore market. No news trucks came. Ethan had refused them. Instead, there were folding tables, coffee urns, cocoa, chicken noodle soup from New Hope Baptist Church, and boxes of socks sorted by size, gloves in one bin, hats in another, blankets stacked along the wall, a sign near the front read, no child should have to prove they are cold. Megan worked the table with Carla for mornings. Kyle was there, too, quiet, carrying boxes from the back without being asked. When he saw Lisa, he nodded with visible effort. Miss Carter, he said, I'm sorry for what I said. Lisa looked at him for a moment. Don't say it to me because Mr. Whitmore told you to. Kyle swallowed. I'm saying it because I heard myself on that recording and I didn't like the man talking. Lisa accepted that with a small nod. Then be someone else next time. Yes, ma'am. Rose sat near the cocoa table wearing her gray socks and a coat Ethan suspected she had owned for 20 years. Annie stood beside her, handing out sticker labels to children who wanted to write their names on cups. Ethan approached, but Rose spoke before he could. This is better than a speech. I agree. Keep it that way. I intend to. A little boy came to the table holding a pair of blue gloves. His father, a tired man in a mechanic's jacket, asked Megan how much they cost. Megan smiled. Nothing today. Just make sure they fit. The man hesitated. Rose leaned over and said, Sir, take the gloves. Let the child's fingers win. The man looked at her, then nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm just sitting here supervising. Annie giggled. Later, Ethan asked Annie if she wanted to say anything to the volunteers before they closed. She shook her head at first, then looked at Rose's feet and changed her mind. She stood beside the table, small among coats and boxes and adults pretending not to lean in too closely. I just wanted my grandma's feet to be warm, she said. That was all. Rose clapped first, Lisa next, then Megan, Carla, Frank, Mr. Alvarez, the father with the mechanic's jacket, and the rest of the room. Ethan did not clap right away. He watched Annie look at her grandmother, not embarrassed, not proud exactly, just satisfied that the sentence had been understood. Only then did he bring his hands together. Outside, Cleveland remained cold. The roads were still wet. The rent was still too high for too many people. Jobs still turned people away. Winter still found the cracks. But inside that store, at least for one evening, warmth had a system, and nobody had to bargain for it. Christmas Eve came with a hard blue cold over Cleveland, but the Carter house held its warmth, not the kind of warmth that came from money alone. The heater worked. Yes, the windows no longer breathed winter through the edges, and the new weather strip under the door kept the draft from crawling across the floor, but the house felt warm in other ways, too. A pot of chicken soup sat on the stove. Cornbread cooled in a square pan on the counter. A small baked chicken rested under foil, and a store-bought sweet potato pie waited beside 3 mugs ready for cocoa. The Christmas tree stood near the front window. It was small, no taller than Annie, with lights Lisa had bought on clearance the year before and paper ornaments Annie had made at school. One ornament was shaped like a gray sock. Rose had laughed when she saw it, then told Annie to hang it near the top where history could see it. Lisa came home just after 5, wearing her Whitmore corporate jacket over her work shirt. Her name tag was still clipped to her chest. Annie ran to the door. "Mama, you forgot to take it off." Lisa looked down. "I guess I did." Rose sat in her armchair with the gray socks on her feet and a blanket across her knees. "Leave it. I like seeing your name in print." Lisa smiled, tired, but not worn down the way she had been before. "It's just a name tag, Mama. No such thing as just a name when the world has spent years trying not to learn it." Lisa did not answer right away. She took off her coat, hung it by the door, then touched the name tag once with her fingertips. The job had not solved everything. Jobs rarely did. There were still bills to arrange, forms to sign, follow-up appointments for Rose, and school papers for Annie that appeared in her backpack at the worst possible times. But Lisa had a schedule now. She had paid sick time coming. She had a supervisor who called her Miss Carter without making a performance of it. She had work, and work gave shape to the week. Annie followed her into the kitchen. "Did people know your name today?" "They did." "Did they say it right?" Lisa opened the cabinet for plates. "Most of them," Rose called from the living room. "Correct the rest." "I did, Mama." "Good." A knock came at the door before Lisa could set the table. Annie looked through the curtain. "It's Mr. Whitmore." Lisa wiped her hands on a dish towel. "Let him in." Ethan stood on the porch in a dark coat, holding a modest box wrapped in brown paper and tied with green string. No driver waited at the curb. No assistant stood behind him. Just Ethan, snow on his shoulders, looking almost uncertain for the first time since Annie had met him. "Merry Christmas Eve," he said. Annie opened the door wider. "Grandma says come in before the heat gets out. Your grandmother is practical. She says practical is holy on weekdays, but Christmas Eve counts, too." Ethan stepped inside, smiling. "I'll remember that." Rose looked him over from the armchair. "You came alone?" "Yes, ma'am." "No cameras hiding in your coat?" "No, ma'am." "No newspaper people in the bushes?" "Not that I saw." "Then you may stay 10 minutes. Lisa shook her head. "Mama, what? He is a busy man. I am giving him structure." Ethan handed Lisa the box for all of you. "Nothing extravagant." Rose lifted an eyebrow. "That is what extravagant people say before trouble." Lisa opened it at the kitchen table. Inside was a soft scarf for Rose, dark blue and warm without being fancy. There were 2 children's books for Annie, both with her name written carefully on a card instead of printed on a label. For Lisa, there was a sturdy winter work coat, plain black, the kind meant for bus stops, parking lots, and early mornings. At the bottom was a handwritten note. Lisa read it silently first. Then Rose said out loud, "Don't make old people guess." Lisa cleared her throat. "Thank you for reminding me what my grandmother taught me. Warmth is not charity. It is something people owe one another when the world turns cold." E clears throat W. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Rose said, "That is almost not bad." Ethan laughed softly. "High praise, moderate praise. We have covered this." Annie picked up one of the books. "Did your grandma read to you?" "When she could. Mostly she told stories while she cooked." "What kind?" "Stories about people who had less than they needed but more courage than anyone noticed." Annie thought about that. "Like Grandma Rose." Ethan looked toward Rose. "Very much like Grandma Rose." Rose waved a hand. "Do not start decorating me with words. I am trying to eat dinner." Lisa set another plate on the table without asking Ethan whether he would stay. "You can eat if you want. It's soup, chicken, cornbread, and pie. That sounds better than anything waiting for me at home." Rose pointed toward the kitchen. "Then wash your hands. Rich people still carry germs." "Yes, ma'am." Dinner was simple and slow. Ethan sat at the small table with his sleeves rolled back, eating soup from a white bowl with a chipped rim. Annie asked him whether billionaires had to wash dishes. He told her, "Not often enough." Rose said that explained a great deal about the country. Lisa nearly choked on her tea. They talked about ordinary things, the weather, the church dinner, Annie's school program, Lisa's first week at work, Rose's follow-up appointment. Ethan listened more than he spoke, which Rose appeared to approve of. After dinner, Annie brought the glass jar from the windowsill and sat cross-legged near the tree. The $120 still rested inside. She dropped one new penny into it, then held it up to watch the coins shift. Rose looked over. "Why keep that old jar, baby?" Annie turned it in her hands. "So I remember." "Remember what?" Annie glanced at Ethan, then at her mother, then at the gray socks on Rose's feet. That $120 can start something big. Lisa sat very still. Rose's face softened, but her voice stayed steady. That it can. But remember the rest, too. What rest? That you were enough before the money did anything. Annie looked down at the jar. Even when it wasn't enough for socks, especially then. Ethan turned his cup slowly on the table. He had heard board members, lawyers, pastors, reporters, and executives speak about values for most of his adult life. None had said it cleaner than Rose Carter in an armchair on Christmas Eve. Outside, a car passed slowly over packed snow. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. The little tree lights blinked against the window, reflected faintly in the dark glass. Ethan stood after a while. I should let you have your evening, Rose said. You should take pie with you. I couldn't. You could. You were choosing not to. That is different. Lisa wrapped a slice in foil before he could refuse again. At the door, Annie handed him a folded paper ornament. It was another gray sock cut unevenly with green crayon around the edges. For your office, she said. Ethan took it with care. Thank you. I'll put it near the jar. The pretend jar. The reminder jar. Annie nodded. Good. Don't forget. I won't. Rose called from the chair. Forgetting is easy when life gets comfortable. Ethan looked back. I know. Then make yourself uncomfortable on purpose now and then. Keeps the soul awake. I'll try. Do better than try. Schedule it. You're a businessman. Lisa laughed again. And this time Ethan did too. When he stepped outside, the cold met him clean and sharp. He walked to his car, parked along the curb, and sat for a moment before starting the engine. From the house window, he could see Annie showing Rose one of the books. Lisa stood in the kitchen wrapping leftovers, her name tag still shining against her work shirt. Ethan reached into his coat and took out his grandmother's old scarf. The fabric was worn thin in places, but he had kept it through moves, marriages, losses, boardrooms, and years when he told himself memory was the same as gratitude. It was not. Gratitude had to become something with hands. He looked at the Carter house. Warm now, not perfect, not finished, but warm. Then he touched the scarf once and spoke into the quiet car. I didn't forget, Grandma. A few days later, the paper ornament hung in his office beside the glass jar with $1.20. Every executive who came in saw it, some asked, some did not. Ethan found both answers useful. Warm feet, warm hearts kept running past Christmas. Then through January, then February. The first month, stores gave away socks, gloves, hats, and blankets. The second month, they added emergency heating referrals. By the third, Whitmore Market had partnered with churches, senior centers, and tenant groups in 3 cities. It did not fix winter. It did not fix poverty. It did not erase every careless look at every counter, but it changed what happened next. In places, Ethan's name was on the sign. One afternoon, Megan watched an older man count coins for cold medicine and quietly call over a supervisor. Not to remove him, but to help him find the store assistant's card. Another day, Kyle carried boxes of gloves to a church van without being asked. He still had a long way to go, but at least now he knew which direction shame was supposed to point. Lisa kept her job. Then she got extra training. Rose kept her appointments and complained about each one with enough energy that Dr. Levin called it progress. Annie kept the jar on the windowsill, adding coins now and then, never spending the original $1.20. Years from now, she would remember the store less clearly than the warmth that came after. She would remember her grandmother's feet in gray socks, her mother's name tag, Megan's apology, Ethan's old scarf, and the way adults sometimes learned when a child told the truth simply enough. But that Christmas Eve, she only knew the house was warm. She curled beside Rose's chair with a book open across her knees while Lisa turned off the kitchen light. Rose rested one hand on Annie's shoulder and watched the tree blink in the window. Grandma, Annie said. Yes, baby. Next time somebody needs socks, can we help? Rose looked at Lisa, then toward the jar. Yes, she said. That's how warmth works. Once it reaches you, you pass it on. And outside, Cleveland remained cold. Snow sat along the curbs. Wind moved through alleys and bus stops and old houses with tired windows. There were still people counting coins, still mothers walking to interviews, still grandmothers pretending not to be cold. But somewhere in the city, a sign now hung above a box of socks, gloves, and hats. No child should have to prove they are cold, and sometimes the smallest handful of coins is enough to make grown people count what they forgot. The lesson of this story is that kindness should never wait for proof of suffering. Annie came with only $1.20, but what she truly carried was love, courage, and the hope that someone would listen. Her story reminds us that poverty is not a character flaw and a child in need should never be treated with suspicion before compassion. Real justice is not only helping one person in one moment. It is changing the rules so the next person is treated with dignity, warmth, respect, and humanity are not luxuries. They are things we owe one another, especially when the world turns cold. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration.